Show.
Welcome to the Bobby O Show. My name is Bob Potster, and have I got an interesting show for you today. Our society is in tumult, to say the least. And when the society is in tumult, mental health professionals, wellness professionals, are in dire need because people are having difficulties dealing with the situation in our country. Even some of our elected officials are having difficulty acknowledging what's going on. So having therapy, wellness professionals and others to help people out is very, very important. And in my discovery, and I've done a lot of shows, as you may know, from different aspects of mental health wellness, there are things I've learned about I didn't know. And today I'm having a topic that I'm sure I know very little about, but I have an excellent guest whose name is Tara Beall-Gomes, who is a betrayal therapist, but she has much more that she does. And she'll define for us what she does, what she's doing, and she takes a lot of pride in the work she does in sex therapy as well, which we'll talk about all those topics today on this edition of the Bobby O Show. Hi, Tara.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I always, as I tell my audience, do a prep show by Zoom a couple of days or a few days before the show. And as usual, we had a phenomenal prep show yesterday.
It was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. And we're going to talk about the things that you do and how you can help people deal with addiction and other issues that they may face. I think the best way to start would be for you to talk a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into more detail, et cetera. And you also might want to mention what Grit and Grace Recovery is all about.
Okay.
So take it away.
So it was 9:02 a.m. No, I'm kidding. You don't want to go that far back, do you? All right, so my name is Tara, and I was born and raised in Louisiana, moved up to Connecticut for college. Well, actually, I moved to Pennsylvania for college, and then started my career after college in television, actually. Very short stint with television and public relations, realizing that Oprah had a pretty solid job, and there was no way I was going to be able to take over her ratings. So I decided to go back to grad school and really pursue what my heart has always known, and that was the world of psychology. So fast forward, I graduated 2 years ago. No, it's been a couple decades. And I now own Grit and Grace Recovery, which is a practice that really came out of my other practice. I own 2 counseling practices. I own Main Street Counseling as well. About 2011, I founded Main Street Counseling with a focus really on all ages across the lifespan. Through that work, I was seeing things I really didn't understand what to name. I was seeing a lot of interpersonal trauma. I was seeing a lot of addiction, but we weren't sure what we were calling it then, if that makes sense. So about 8-9 years ago, I really fell into this world of sex and porn addiction, not by being an addict myself, but actually being a betrayed partner. So I, for years, thought about, do I let people know that I've experienced betrayal trauma or not? And I decided in the last 4 or 5 years that it really gives me credibility, not a liability, right? So then I just dug in.
That's important because I had someone on, Christine Cocciola, who is an expert in coercive control, and she told us on the show that she was coercively controlled at age 19. I have a guest next week who's going to be someone who talks about drug addiction, and he was a drug addict and recovered from that. So you don't need to have those kinds of betrayals to be an expert in your field, but having it does give you some credibility to some of your patients.
Right, and I thought it was really important to me to not be able to only focus on one side of the addiction. So I have an advanced certification I'm a SAT-P, so I'm a sex addiction treatment.
Certification what?
As a SAT-P, so I'm a sex addiction treatment professional. And then I have another advanced certification as a betrayal trauma specialist. I'm the only one in Connecticut with either of those. We do have 3 or 4 other specialists for sex addiction. But I'm proud of that. I'm humble about it, but I'm proud of it because I do a lot of work around it. I just went through another 5-day training last week so that I can be, or advanced training so that I can be a certified full therapeutic disclosure coach and guide. I'm going through certification process for coaching license, and I also am certified in deconstructing gaslighting and inner child recovery. And I'm a school counselor, or I was.
What's gaslighting?
Oh gosh, well that's another show. That's like an entire show. It's a pattern of behaviors. So it's interesting because most people know the movie Gaslighting from decades ago, where the actor was. Do you know the movie Gaslighting?
No.
Oh, okay, Gaslighting, where the husband in this relationship was attempting to convince his wife that the propane-powered light actually was on, and it was off. And then he would turn it back off, and then she would say, I thought it was just on. Like that sort of thing. And it was all to gain power and control over her so that he could acquire an estate. That's sort of my version of the movie. But really it's to change someone's perception and their understanding of what is happening to them. And gaslighting is something that requires a lot of deconstructing because you're looking at patterns of behavior over time. What traps you fall into, what tactics gaslighters use. And I think that's really important in the work that I do, is to really help people understand that so they can understand how to understand their story, their truth. You like the truth.
The rule of law.
You know something about the truth.
That's right. I can handle the truth.
Yes, yes.
You know, it's interesting. Look at your background. You have a very diverse background, which I think is very positive for you because you have a whole different spectrum, a whole perspective. I was on the Board of Education for many years. I'm now a hearing officer in some districts to hear cases involving disputes between the Board of Education and parents or whatever, and having been on both sides of the aisle, having been a decision maker when I was on the board, and having been, from the board's perspective, representing kids and families in the other perspective, if you're on both sides of the aisle, you can understand where people are coming from and better serve what you're doing. And I noticed, for example, in your resume, you were in the Bethel Public Schools for a period of time, the New Canaan Public Schools. What did you do in the school districts?
I was a school counselor. And I spent a short amount of time in Shelton for my internship practicum, which I know is close to your heart.
Shelton born and Shelton bred, and when I die, I'll be Shelton bred.
Yeah,
Shelton
hashtag Shelton, I guess.
When
that's where I started my career.
When?
2002? 2003.
Was Leon Sylvester superintendent of schools then?
Yeah.
I hired him.
Oh, you did?
I was on the board.
You're responsible for that.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
That's good.
That's a good responsibility.
He was a good guy.
Yeah, really good guy.
I'd say was. I don't think he's superintendent anymore.
Retired.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So you have all these different experiences. Tell me, how does one get into, I want to ask the question carefully, sex therapy? How is it that you decided that was an area of addiction? We're going to get into this in greater detail, but how does one decide to get into sex therapy?
So there's a little bit of a difference between sex therapist and a sex addiction therapist.
Thank you for correcting me.
Because any sex therapists listening are like, that's not what I do. So a lot of my colleagues, I actually have, attend peer supervision weekly. So I have colleagues across the world. And so a lot of them are also sex therapists. So when I finish this round of certifications, I will go for my PhD in sex therapy as well. I talk about two sides of it. You really need to be able to understand, is this someone who is struggling with shame around sex, or is this someone who has a sex addiction? Because sex addiction is not necessarily about wanting sex all the time. Just like,
it's not.
No, it's not. It's really interesting. Just like alcohol is not necessarily about wanting alcohol all the time, or alcoholism is not necessarily about wanting alcohol all the time. It's not. It's really about the process of the ritualization and the numbing out process, the emotionality that goes behind it.
So let's go back a step.
Yeah.
Let's take out the sex addiction.
Yes.
Let's talk about what is addiction.
Addiction. So addiction is actually not found in the DSM-5.
Time out. DSM-5 is what?
The Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So that is the
Bible.
The Bible for psychiatry for the United States. We also, not to confuse you, or not to add any more acronyms. I know you're not easily confused. Not to add any more acronyms, the ICD-10 or ICD-11.
ICD, International.
ICD, yeah, you got it.
Conference.
No,
whatever.
Classification.
Classification.
Like, wait, what are you doing
Yeah,
to me?
and the issue, by the way,
Yes.
just so you know, DCM-5 is dealt with by lawyers.
Yeah.
Because if we have cases involving custody visitation or
Mm-hmm.
clients who have issues, there'll be maybe a therapist, psychologist who diagnosed one or both of the parties, and knowing what the Bible, I call it the
Yeah,
Bible,
yeah.
says, and you read it and they tell you how to find things, and it's very important, but it only makes me an amateur mental health professional, because you really need to have the guidance as a lawyer of someone like you or another therapist to help us understand what the DSM-5 means as it relates to that case. So let's go back to
Right,
what is,
right.
so what is addiction? So addiction, you said, is not listed
That
in DSM-5.
word is not listed in it. So really it's about, can I live without this, fill in the blank? Can I live without this substance? Can I live without this behavior? So it's a compulsion to need
That's
the
the word.
behavior in order to survive. That's the way I like to think about it and talk about it. I mean, we can go through diagnostic criteria, but at the end of the day, you can have two people consuming one behavior, or participating in one behavior and consuming one substance. One may become addicted and one may not. So there's a lot that goes into it. Neurobiology, any adverse childhood experiences, nurture-nature debate, the environment that you're in, attachment systems. There's a lot that goes into it. So sometimes people will come in and they'll say, I think I'm addicted to porn. And I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about that. I'm not going to tell the person they're not, and maybe we find out they're actually not, but still they're telling me they're struggling with unwanted sexual behaviors at the end of the day.
All right, let me
Yes.
sort of break this up a little bit. And I told you to ask this question before the show.
Okay.
And that is, I want to ask you very carefully. I've had people on my shows who have been coercively controlled by a spouse, and that person, Christine Cocciola, has become an expert nationally in coercive control behavior in parties. I have a fellow named Steve Paymer, who's going to be on my show next week, who was a drug addict years and years and years ago, recovered, and now is one of the experts in the state of Connecticut on drug and alcohol rehabilitation. Did you have any of those kinds of issues in the sex area that led you to this career, or not really?
Not personally.
Is that question
I'm
okay
going
to
to answer, absolutely.
Okay,
There's
thank you.
nothing off the table.
Thank you, nothing
yeah,
off the table.
nothing off the table. And I'm going to answer your question, but I make it comfortable for everyone coming in. And the way that I kind of just break the ice is saying, when was it introduced to you and how?
When was it? You mean?
And the it could be sex.
Sex.
Porn,
Drugs.
lust, drugs, gambling, shopping, eating, relationships with all that sort of thing, right? When was it introduced to you and how?
What does introduce mean?
Introduced is given to you. So it doesn't have to mean it's non-consensual, because you can say, yeah, I'll look at it, or I'll take a look at it. But typically it's by someone that has some sort of authority over you, right? So people that come in and they say they're addicted to pornography, I always say, when was it introduced to you? And the question, or the answer is 99.9% of the time between ages 9 and 11.
That early. You know, it's interesting because I've had many clients who have said that they were depressed. And by saying many, I'm saying some percent, 20, 30%, whatever the percent may be, said that they were depressed. And I said, oh, well, who diagnosed you with depression? And half of those people would say, well, I was never diagnosed by a mental health professional. Well, then how'd you get the diagnosis? Well, I think I'm depressed. I think it's a very important distinction that you just raised that ties in what I just said, because people come to you and say, hey, I'm addicted to A, B, and C, and you're going to say, well, first of all, is that person really addicted or not, right? That's part of your, is that part of your intake that you do?
It is, because it can change the treatment plan. If it's someone who is struggling, because then you have to go into, well, what messages and narratives did you receive around that? So I'll have someone that comes in and says, compulsive masturbation. Okay, well, let's talk about that and what it actually means for you. You're looking at me like, what?
No.
You and I are both trained to analyze body language, right? So we're like, wait, what?
No. I was waiting for that comment a little bit later on.
I just kind of flew it in there, right? Nothing is uncomfortable for me to talk about. So I'm just like, what are you having for dinner? We talk about compulsive masturbation.
We talked before the show, did we not, about you have to take care and control me to make sure if I blush too much, you got to put some more makeup on me. No, so keep going.
Right. I think I lost my train of thought. But so
I
people
definitely lost my train of thought.
Okay, so people.
Are we having too much fun in this show?
Right, but listen, it is not funny when someone comes in and says, "I'm struggling with compulsive masturbation." That part is not funny. You're sort of like, "Oh, we didn't expect that coming." Response is like, "Okay, that was not on your list of questions."
I was going to ask for the dictionary to see what.
Right. Like, what does that mean? So and I want to be clear too that although statistically more men would be diagnosed with anything under that umbrella of sex addiction, statistically.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think that, honestly, I think it's more females in their life that are kind of pushing them to the altar, the sacrificial therapy altar of what's wrong with you, what's going on with you.
Interesting.
Because I do have plenty of women on my caseload that are struggling with love addiction. And then when we start to really get into it, there are other unwanted sexual behaviors that they're participating in. And again, there's so many qualifiers to that, right? Because what might be an unwanted sexual behavior for you might not be for the guy sitting next to you. So you even have to define that.
The guy next to you is Bobby O also.
Bobby O, that Bobby O, right?
So
the Duke Bobby O.
Let's break this down. So
okay.
Tell me, when you say sex addiction,
right?
What does sex mean in that context? Too much, too little? What does it mean?
Fortunately, and I promise I'm going to answer that, but fortunately, our field is moving towards using the word compulsive sexual behaviors. Or using the acronym.
That's good.
That's good, right? They're moving towards that acronym because it better explains what is actually happening.
So is it compulsory too much, too little?
Yes.
Or is that
yes.
Both of those?
Yes. There could be an extreme avoidance because we also work with people who have intimacy anorexia or sexual anorexia. And then you have to get in and figure out what's really going on there.
Why do you use the phrase anorexia?
I don't know. I don't know why honestly, I don't know why that term was chosen. I feel this part of our field is relatively new, meaning it's like 25, 30 years old. So what I learned last year still applies, but there's new learning this year. Which most fields.
It's like being a lawyer where you have a case you're relying on for many, like Roe versus Wade, for example.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it changes after 50 years. So let's jump. So now you've gotten the definition of sex addiction.
Right.
What's love addiction?
Love addiction would be really you're replacing the word sex with love. Is that you have this inability to not be in a relationship. And you will do whatever it takes to make that person stay with you. You know, someone that just wrote a great book on it, I think you should reach out to her for an interview.
What's her name?
Well, she might be a little busy, but I'm sure she can make time for this. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Eat, Pray, I bought that book.
Right. So she is a love addict. And her memoir was released in the fall. And a client of mine told me about it, and I had not heard about it, and I couldn't put it down, and I read it in 2 nights. And she's a love addict who was in a relationship with someone who was addicted to cocaine and heroin.
Does love addict mean some people are afraid of love, they run away from it, and others fall in love with the next person they meet? Or is that the kind of...
you're always like bouncing onto the next person. But I like really want to go deeper into what you just said, the first part of that, because it's really an attachment disorder. So it's affect dysregulation, it's attachment disorder. It is avoidant attachment. I need you, but I'm scared to get too close to you, right? So most people that come in that would fall under that category of, addiction, and we'll use that in quotes, really really meet the criteria for avoidant attachment.
So then we get to lust addiction. How's that? What is lust addiction?
Like really it's the over objectification, and I know that there's not really a spectrum of objectification, but it's just always everyone you look at, or that's what you're just lusting after. You go to Home Depot and you can't stop but objectify and think about what it would be like to be with that person and to have sex with that person.
Okay, and are there any other, you also have porn addiction.
Porn addiction, that's what I see the most of. That's about 3 to 6% of the population in the United States. 3 to 6%, let's see, the United States has 300 million people approximately, so 5% of that would be 15 million people? There's about, the statistics are about 3 to 6% of the population are struggling with porn addiction.
So it'd be fair to say that if someone calls you for an appointment, they'll get an appointment in 3 or 4 years? Is that how it
I don't have a shortage of clients, but I anyone that calls my office is going to get communication back from me within 24 to 48 hours. I was up until midnight last night sending emails back for people that had, messaged me the day before, because it is a very lonely and a very isolating situation to be in, and it's more common for people to call me when their relationship is crumbling and falling apart. We're talking foreclosures of homes. We're talking, divorce attorneys. I actually get quite a few referrals from divorce attorneys just saying, you know what, can we just see what's going on here? This potential client's going to meet with you a few times and just see, what's really happening here.
It's a smart lawyer or any professional who knows what the signs are, but also knows what he or she doesn't know,
right,
and refers to an expert such as you. So we're going to do a couple of 2 or 3 shows we talked about, not today, but over the next several months.
I need an outfit change if we're going to stay today.
That's right. But in any event, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about, once you've made your, quote, diagnosis, even a step before that, how do you determine what category someone fits into?
I don't really. It doesn't really matter, honestly.
It doesn't.
Because I try to, first of all, if someone comes in and they feel like that's the lens I'm looking at them through, shame's going to come with them. And I have had people get up, and I'm like, get out of your seat, go out in the hallway, and come back in when you're leaving shame out in the waiting room. Or go back to your car and come back. Go downstairs and get a coffee and come back. Because if they feel as though I'm looking at them only through that lens, and I work with couples, I work with a lot of betrayed partners, and that's something I want to make clear too, is that when I'm working with someone who is the betrayed, that's the terminology we use.
The E versus the or.
Right, yeah. When they're the betrayed, I am very partner sensitive. They will never once hear me say, are you staying or are you leaving? Because I was traumatized when I walked into a therapist's office, a very skilled, very seasoned therapist, and she looked at me and said, are you going to stay with this guy?
This is before your first divorce.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you've had only one divorce, but before that ended.
I've had 4. No, I'm just kidding.
But the thing that's interesting, though, is you and I are similar in terms of we have to have some way of not categorizing, but helping identify what issues are that people have. Because when I'm seeing someone for a new, let's say, divorce intake, I have a sort of a standard form. A lot of lawyers have a sort of standard form that you ask certain questions, not because it's a cookie cutter situation, but rather there are different kinds of situations. You have people who are going to get divorced. When do you want to get divorced? Yesterday. Others saying, well, I'm just getting information. I want to decide what I want to do. And other things that come up, and you try to have to understand where people are, but I never judge people, but I need to understand. And also, if there's a need to have someone see an expert in another field, I want to identify that sooner than later. I often would tell people, even if they don't have a therapist, but are having some struggle in the fact that he or she wants to leave or has been left, whatever, I'll say, things are not a crisis now, but why don't you go talk to a therapist 2 or 3 times to get comfortable with someone so that when the crisis hits, I use an S word that I won't use on TV. Use the M word, but that's okay. But the shit hit the fans. You want to be ready to know what's going on when it happens. You can be ready and comfortable. Now, as I understand it, people don't come to you. As I analogize it, I think you're sort of like, you go to your general doctor, I've got a temperature today. The doctor may say, you know what, I think you may have a urology problem. Let's send you to an expert. Is that how it works?
That's exactly how my brain was thinking when you were talking about that.
We're
I know. Look at that attunement.
Don't read what I'm thinking.
I know, right?
Vice versa.
Attunement's amazing.
Should we do a pinky swear right now?
Pinky swear. Exactly what I was thinking. That if I go to my doctor and I have an ankle problem, I'm hoping he's not going to refer me to a cardiologist. Tell me what's going on. And that's why I really do try hard to network a lot with primary care physicians and pediatricians and urologists, because many of the clients that I work with have gone to the urologist with erectile dysfunction and have been given medication to help with that. And when we start to learn, it's really about porn use. So they have porn-induced erectile dysfunction, and then we take that out of the picture, and they're okay.
Porn-induced erectile dysfunction. You want to explain that to me?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's literally what it says. That they're watching so much pornography, and it's changing the neural pathways in their brain. So think about, most people know about gambling
From
addiction.
from where to where? Changing
It's changing your neural pathways from where you're receiving reward. The reward pleasure center of your brain is activated when you're with your partner, a real live human. And then it becomes desensitized to the real live human because of the novelty of porn, just constantly switching. And then when you get tired of that genre, you can switch to another genre. There's no good that comes out of porn. And I know that there are sex therapists in the field, they're like, get her off of the show. But there's no good. There's no data that supports that pornography can actually, one, it should never be used for sex education for children, and that's the excuse, and I'll call it an excuse, that a lot of parents will say to me, oh, they're middle school boys, they're just learning about sex. I'm like, well, get them out of there. It's awful, and we could have a whole other show on that. And it's not used to, if you are coercing your partner to use it for enhancement in your relationship, that is non-consensual, and your partner does not want that. That's not helpful. They're feeling betrayed and they're feeling cheated on, is what typically happens.
So pornography is not necessarily minors being pornography on TV. It could be a 35-year-old woman who's on TV and they're watching. That's the same kind of.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So here's what I want to do, because we've sort of gone around a lot of different topics, and I want to sort of hit one pretty hard. Let's go to sex therapy, sex addiction.
Yeah. Oh, and one of your lawyer, and so as I'm thinking, or an attorney, it's a lawyer. Sorry, I don't know which one. Lawyer, attorney?
Just the Bobby O.
Just the Bobby O. You're Bobby O. But I'm thinking about this through all these different lenses, right? And there was a comment that you and I both.
Attorney the Bobby O.
The OG. Okay, we'll just go with the OG. So there was, we were talking a few minutes ago, and you asked me, when did this hit me that this was when was I betrayed? When did I become betrayed? And I almost made it sound like it was my ex that did that, and I want to make it clear, because I'm sure my kids will see this, that it was not their father, that it was not him.
Ladies and gentlemen
of the jury,
it
was not.
We were not referring to.
And I don't need his attorney calling me either, saying, "Oh my gosh, what are you talking about?"
You have a good attorney you could work with.
I do. I have a great one that I can work with.
It's funny. So if we're talking about what was in our heads,
yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what was in my head.
Okay, what was it?
When you're talking about pornography, I'm thinking, so those of us who for their freshman year at Yale had Farrah Fawcett majors on our walls.
Oh, yeah.
What did that mean about all of us at Yale who had Farrah Fawcett major?
I mean, you're spending a lot of time in the library and you needed a little break. No, I mean, that's interesting because, but see, there's a perfect example of you had a poster of someone that you thought was this beautiful, sexy, attractive woman.
She had a high IQ, that's why I like.
That's where I was going with this. Then you learned about her and you learned that really you were attracted to her intelligence. We'll go with that, okay? But as an example, that didn't then lead to that being your way of coping with stressors in life, right?
An important thing we're saying, by the way, we're having a few yucks and laughs along the show, but that's probably because the topic is for me, more nervous than for you, but it's still, there's a little tension in the air, but we're not laughing at people, we're just saying that we're trying to analyze these issues in a way that is comfortable to us in the audience, especially us.
Right.
Especially me.
Right.
Especially me.
Because let me tell you, I cry many times throughout the day with people. I was on a session this morning with a couple, and we were practicing some skills in the session, and I'm crying. It is like, literally, I know it's cliche, but it is a blessing to be able to sit with people in their journey as we move towards, I say, post-traumatic growth, because people that have been betrayed meet the diagnostic criteria, often meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD, complex PTSD, because of what it does to your nervous system, what it does to your attachment system. And so sitting with people in that pain all day, I wouldn't be human if I didn't have an emotional or a visceral response to that. And I work with, because there are so few of us that do this, I'm getting the top 1% to 3% who have lost everything. They've lost their homes, their families. I'm working with spouses of people who are incarcerated due to porn addictions. When they've, been found with, it's called CASM, child abuse, sexual material, or child pornography as we know it. So I'm sitting in the depths of hell with people.
You just said that, and you're reading my mind. I'm getting a little bit nervous here because I'm reading each other's minds.
This is
but
good.
What I was thinking was, since just like me, I have attorney-client privilege, you have mental and professional privilege, and so we go through days where maybe the last appointment of the day is, wow, and you go home, and how do you take the pressure off yourself? I would play basketball 4 days a week. How do you go home and you can't tell your husband, you won't believe the story I just heard today,
No.
Or you can't call your best friend. So how do you ease down?
So at the end of the parking lot, there's a stop sign, and I look at that stop sign every single day, and I say, okay, stop here. I do this every day. Stop here, and I preach containment all day. Like, our sessions are for containing this shit, like contain this, right? And I say, okay, if I'm going to do that and help other people, I've got to contain it and leave it here. Now, I also get calls and text messages and all of that, but I try very hard to look at that visual and say, this is where that containment is, and this is where my personal life begins.
Not easy.
No, right, because I'm carrying that heavy, heavy stuff, and most of the people I work with, when I first start working with them, they're in crisis. They're in crisis.
Look, you're not the only profession where you cry. I was in a case in which the parents lost a child in a tragic situation. I don't want to say any more about that. And there, at least somebody cried. And we had a mental health professional. It was a collaborative kind of case, which means that the divorce is done in a way where you don't go to court all the time. You try to resolve things in offices. And you'd have what they call coaches, and we had a phenomenal parental coordinator, and somebody cried every session, and it wasn't easy to go. But I think you also have a trick that you've shown me when you showed me your arms. Show us your arms.
Still I Rise, Dr. Maya Angelou.
Still I Rise. Can you see that?
Where am I going? Right here? Still I Rise.
So she showed me, she had her elbow, we were putting the microphone on, I said, what does Still I Rise stand for?
Well, this is Dr. Maya Angelou's poem.
And who is Dr. Maya Angelou? Just so everybody knows.
The queen of the universe. An amazing social activist, racial justice warrior, black woman that was someone, you know, when people ask you those like cheesy questions of, if you could spend the day with anyone dead or alive, who would it be? It's always my grandfather first. He passed. It's always him first, and Dr. Maya Angelou second. I mean, how amazing.
Why Grandpa?
Oh man, he was my ride or die. I don't want to cry on your show.
Crying's allowed.
Yeah, he was a phenomenal human. He was a coach at Baylor and Ole Miss and LSU, and
football coach or what?
Well, so he was the athletic director at LSU for a while. He was a football coach at Baylor.
What was your last name? His name?
Beall. His last name is Beall.
Beall.
My maiden name. So he was back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and he played high school football. I have his picture is in every one of my offices. But it's interesting because I always think about, so what hung in his office, in every office he ever went to, he had this green and yellow, or green and gold, I think it was supposed to be, plaque that said, don't look behind unless you're going in that direction. And I laugh every time I say it. I'm like, that's all I do is help people look behind and see what happened in the beginning of their lives as to, you know, like what's happening for them right now. But I know I wouldn't be where I was today if I was not, you know, if I was not as close as I was to him. And he actually was very disappointed when I told him I was going into the field of psychology. And he sat me in his little coach's office and he said, Tara, he's a Southern guy, right? So Tara, he said, you'll make me proud if you get a dual certification and you get your educator's certificate. So I did, and I went into school counseling, and I did that for some time, and I did that for a while. He was just a cool dude, and he taught me a lot about the racial injustices of the world. I'm in a biracial marriage
Before you get
now.
to that, before you get to that, which I want to get into, tell me, having mentioned your grandpa, tell me how your grandpa has influenced the way you practice that's where I was going. See, leading questions, right?
I've never thought about this, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, that is so easy to answer. He taught me that you will climb the ladder, and you better not step on anyone as you're going over it. And you better get to know the people that are cleaning the offices, and you better get to know the people that are sitting at the front desk of the building, because they're the two people that have been there the longest, and they're the two people that you need to respect the most in any business you're ever in.
That is phenomenal advice. In fact, when people say to me, to the extent you're a success, and I think I'm a success, but to the extent you're a success or I'm a success, what's the key to the success that you've had as a lawyer? And it's an easy answer. The legal assistance that I have had. And I have been blessed in my 40 years of practicing law. I may look like I'm under 40, but I'm not.
I know. I just thought you had your 21st birthday. That's amazing.
You know, I'll tell you, you're going to have a second divorce coming up because I'm the third guy. But I've had some phenomenal legal assistance along the way. And the ones that are the best for me are the ones who say no.
Yeah, like boundaries.
One of Trump's biggest problems is that he only has yes people. You need a no person, you know, who says whatever. I once, this sort of my sense of humor, I had this lovely young lady who was, I was about 28 when I started, when I had her as an assistant, and she was with me. And she was so polite and sweet. So one day I dictated a letter saying, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, go blank yourself." And I wanted to test and see how she would react to that, to see whether she'd say, "Hey, Bob." So I watched her from my office, and I could see her, in those days with a tape recorder, so I could see her playing it back a couple of times. Then she came back and said, I let him call me Bob, not Mr. Opatzer. I hated that. "Bob, do you want to hear this tape again? There's a word I don't think you want to put on there." Now, some people might have just typed it, but she was that. So you need someone who's going to be in your profession. Do you have assistants who work with you, or not necessarily?
I do now. This is the first year that I've ever had someone. Sam, I really don't know how I don't know how I've survived all this time without her. Sam is amazing, and she has a degree in forensic psychology, which is really cool. And so there wasn't a lot of need to teach her about HIPAA and confidentiality and all of that. Not only is it just natural for her, but she had the skill set around it. And I think you're onto something though, like she gets me and she knows my tone, she knows my voice, she knows how I say things. And so when clients call her, they feel very comfortable talking to her, which is what you're talking about.
Talking about tone.
Tone.
Here you go.
Okay.
One of my pet peeves with our society is COVID. Now, why is COVID, aside from the million people who die, which is, you can't put that aside, it's changed the practice of everything.
Yes.
And I didn't know what a Zoom call was or Microsoft Teams was before, but now we use it all the time. The problem is you can't tell tone. There is no tonality in what you say. And I think it hurts in what people are saying because it can be misconstrued, whatever. When I was on the Board of Ed in Richfield, we hired a wonderful, wonderful principal for Richfield High School from Ohio. And when she came in her first day to the auditorium, she said the following. She said, "When I see a student in trouble, I could say, 'I can help you,' or 'I can help you.'"
Open hand.
Okay, and so this one says that "I can help you" says you're going to get your butt kicked, right? This one says "I'm there with you," and so tonality is important. So how do you use the tonality? Well, first of all, do you see your clients in person or on the Zoom, or how do you see
in
them?
person as much as possible.
Gotta be.
Gotta be in person. I have an office in Southbury and an office in Monroe. And then I do telehealth because I do work with people in other countries and across the country. So I have clients kind of a lot of different spots, which is really cool for me because I'm so big on being around people that are completely different than me and learning about their worldviews, their culture. So it's so cool to be able to work with people just all over the globe.
And
It's really cool.
Southbury is a great town. I used to, when I was playing basketball 4 days a week, 2 days would be in Southbury,
Oh, really?
The community house.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was a Mormon church we used to go to on
Yes.
Saturday mornings at
Yep.
7 in the morning.
Oh, that's early.
In the morning, wintertime, we'd play there, and we would actually, we had a prayer. We did a 5-minute prayer
Yep.
beforehand. I'm Jewish, but we just all did that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a great bakery in there, and plus you have Justice Southbury.
Oh, Justice Southbury.
Which is how we connected.
Yeah, that's how we connected.
That's how we connected through Rick Richardson into the crew.
Yes.
So let's go back to
when you said that about the prayer, my mind immediately went to something that Julia Richardson,
who was on our show,
who was on your show before, she gave a prayer, and I think she started it with, "To whom it may concern." And I always held on to that. I'm like, how great is that? Whoever your higher power is, let's just say this together. And you know, if she watches this, that's always stuck with me. And that was probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So when you said that immediately,
she's awesome.
What a cool.
I did a show with Rick on a couple different, both Justice Southbury and some other things. I did a show with Julia.
Yeah.
Okay. And now we're going to do a show with Rick, Julia, and the mother, Kathy Bauer.
Yeah, what amazing. I want to be in the audience for that one.
You know, it's funny to the audience.
Yeah.
I don't write my questions out. When I go to trial, I don't have my questions written out except maybe expert questions I'll ask of an expert witness. But you so far and I have had at least 10 things we've done which are reading each other's minds, which is a little bit scary.
Yeah, a little scary.
So let's go where I was trying to get to a bit.
Go back on script.
No, not on script. So let's say Susie gets referred to by you, and let's suppose Susie's someone who can't get enough sex in her marriage. I didn't say love, I said sex. And there's a distinction between sex and love, is there not?
Yeah.
What's the difference between sex and love?
I mean, sex is more of a physical act between two people, and love is more of an action verb. But the question I would start with is probably not even what the difference is. The question I'd probably start with is, what role does sex play in your life? Right? Because then you can decide whether or not that would fall under love or not.
Okay, that's good.
Right?
Interesting question.
Wouldn't that kind of...
Yeah, so the lady is referred to you, and there's a problem in the marriage because she can't get enough sex. So when you hear that, do you see only her, or would you see the husband or boyfriend as well, or how does that
So
work?
probably like a lot like mediation works in law is if I'm seeing a couple, I need them both there for all conversations. And then if we're having sidebar conversations, it's very much we're not keeping it a secret. We're going to figure out how you can share that very private thing in our sessions.
Okay, so
right?
let's suppose she's referred to you, and she doesn't want her husband to know that A, she has an issue, that or she thinks she may have an issue. She may not think it's an issue. She may think it's his issue, so let's get to in a second. So she has this discussion, and so he doesn't know she's there.
Right.
So the lady comes to you and says, I can't get enough sex in my marriage, and you'll ask her, I presume, how often, or do you, I don't know, how do you take it from there?
So what I'm careful about is not pathologizing hypersexuality, and not because it could be a case of she has a very high arousal template, or she has a very high need, right? That could just be part of her. So really, it would be
physical need, mental need,
or
both.
All of the above. So really, it's getting to the okay. Well, if you're telling me that you can't get enough, what is enough for you? What would that actually look like? You tell me what enough is, because there really is no definition of how much sex someone is supposed to have and not have in order to be complete as a human. So it's what is enough for you? How do you know what is enough for your partner? What are your core values around sex? Because I don't want to pathologize it. I don't want to make it.
What does it mean to pathologize it?
It means to make it like it's a problem.
Okay.
Right?
I told you once before that one of my favorite movies of all time is Annie Hall. And I'll never forget, maybe because I'm Meshuggah, who knows, a little crazy, but I'll never forget there's a split screen, and Annie Hall is her psychiatrist, and Diane Keaton, that's Diane Keaton, and Woody Allen's his psychiatrist, and they say, the psychiatrist says, how often do you have sex? And she says, all the time, 3 times a week. Same question, Woody Allen, how often do you have sex? Hardly ever, 3 times a week.
Yep.
So
interesting, right?
Right. So now the lady comes to you, and she may or not realize she has a problem. Maybe she wants to know from you, am I having? She might say to you, how often do you have? I mean, I don't know how people.
Yeah. Oh, they'll ask.
They'll ask. Do they ask you really?
Yes. I laugh about. I'm like, what?
Do you go to confession after the conversation?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't share like I do. Well, you know what? So if I were sitting with a friend of mine, I would share that, right? But when you're sitting with a client, that client typically doesn't know how to have boundaries for themselves. So it's me modeling that for them and saying, well, I'm just wondering why you would ask me that question.
Oh, I see.
Right?
So the person you might.
So I never give them an answer.
So
much like I've done to you today. You'll ask me a question and I'll take us over here.
After the show, we'll get some more answers. You know. So what you're saying is that if someone comes to you and perhaps the referring therapist might say, hey, this is the issue going on here, and you're probably probing the wheres and the whys and hows. And I guess I didn't think of it this way, but you were probably saying that you're going to talk to her about not only the physical activity, but also emotional. Right. And can part of the problem be that you diagnose that there's a physical issue, like perhaps she needs more time to get physically aroused?
Is that part of we talk about arousal templates and sexual couples.
An arousal template is what?
Is what does it take to get you aroused? What does it take
for
you to feel like you have or to achieve an orgasm or to sustain an erection? In my office, we really don't get into that, honestly. That usually comes when you're talking about sexual reintegration later in couples recovery.
What does reintegration mean?
Is bringing it back into the relationship in a healthy way. So first you have to figure out, and I want to talk a little bit more about Susie Q. What'd you call her?
Susie Q.
Susie Q.
Whatever.
I don't remember. Johnny, I don't remember what you called her. So we'll talk more about her.
Susie 20.
Susie 20. We'll talk more about her. But first you have to figure out, like, what role does it play in your life? What does it mean for you? What have been all the narratives you've received? Because I've had people that have come in who they'll use the word left or escaped a religious cult, where sex is seen in a very different way that does not align with their actual core values. And so you have to unpack that, deconstruct all that, unlearn a lot of stuff. So it's pretty complex because you have to really understand where they're coming from. I just never want to make them think that it's a bad thing that they want that, is to ask questions around, well, is it interfering with your daily life? I mean, I have had clients who have not been able to hold a job because they are compulsively acting out. Fantasizing. Fantasy relationships is part of this too. Or they will leave work several times a day to meet up with a prostitute. And so their jobs are at risk, and their families are not knowing that they're leaving work several times a day to do that. So those are very, very painful places for them to be, to feel like they can't move on to the next part of their day without acting out on this.
So do you have at some point in time in these meetings and sessions, and we're being very superficial because
Yeah,
if
sure.
we could maybe at the next show really get into a detailed case
Sure.
study.
Yeah, because it's very complex.
Yeah, it's very complex, things I didn't know about, starting from the first 2 minutes of this conversation. But do you at some point in time have a goal? Like if I'm doing a divorce case, the goal is to try to get a fair and equitable distribution of the assets, to try to make sure the children's best interests are protected, and sometimes what's best for the children in the case may be different than what your client wants. And
Sure.
so sometimes we may be talking to a client about, do you really need to fight about that next 5 minutes so that you have exactly 50% of the time? Or is it more important to say if you have 9, 8, and 10-year-old kids, that it's more important that when the kids are 23, they're inviting both of you to the weddings?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
You know, so
Yes.
so tell
great
me,
point.
you know, so do you at some point, I had a good point, thank you.
Yeah, very
so
good
tell
point.
me, so tell me,
If this gig doesn't work out, I got a job for you.
vanilla milkshake and Shake Shack,
Yeah,
there you go.
that's right.
So tell me, do you develop a goal at some point in time?
Yep.
And how do you decide what a goal might be? And the goal might be to help the person be satisfied with less sex, or I mean, I don't know how you get your goals. What are your goals?
Yeah, so I work through so I have treatment plan goals and objectives with everyone. And sometimes they'll ask what they are, and sometimes they don't, because there's the whole intake process, and they kind of just know based on our sessions whether or not they're getting what they came in for. But I work on a 3-phase model. So it's phase 1, and there's no time frame for each of these phases. It's really individualized. But phase 1 is safety and stabilization. So
Safety and
stabilization. So this person.
You talk as fast as I do, so
I know. I'm just like, yeah. I gave a training recently, and it was 3 hours, and they said, I think we need 6 next time. And I was like, okay, that'll be fun.
So that's
So
phase 1.
safety and stabilization is phase 1. So it's like, let's get out of the crisis phase. Let's get you emotionally regulated, your central nervous system back on track, much like you would after a natural disaster, right? So think about it through that lens. Then stage 2, and this applies for natural disasters too, is grieving and mourning. So you're grieving and mourning. It's like an ambiguous grief. The loss of this relationship, or the loss of self, or the loss of the other, the loss of, like a lot of my addicts or betrayers will often grieve having to give up their friend. Porn was their friend, so they go through that grieving process.
And they give let's say the guy's one who likes the porn, the fact that it's decided that if you're going to stay with your girlfriend or wife or whatever, got to get rid of Christy Brinkley.
Yeah, and then we have porn addicts, like AA meetings. There's SA meetings, SAA meetings, SLA meetings, SPA meetings, that's sex porn.
Those are all different organizations?
They're all 12-step meetings, yes. So if you're listening to this, to your viewers, please they're 24 hours a day, every 20 minutes in the world, you can hop on one of these Zooms and just see if this is about you. So there's 12-step meetings everywhere, all the time. So if I'm working with a client, you have to do that. If I'm working with you in that safety and stabilization phase, you're doing 90 meetings in 90 days. And if you do 2 on Saturday, you don't get to skip Sunday. You're doing another one on Sunday. You just did 2 on Saturday because you needed 2 on Saturday.
With the goal being?
Abstinence.
So now how about let's do the reverse?
Yeah, for the betrayed partner.
Yeah, let's do the person who comes in and says, I'm thinking about a Seinfeld episode.
Okay.
The one, you watch Seinfeld?
I did.
Okay.
When I was in high school.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I knew I was going to say that. You're going to be like, oh, God.
Well, there was this one episode in which Elaine Bennis talked about how she was faking
an orgasm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So
it's an easy word to say.
I'm going to call up your husband. I want to talk to your husband about it.
Oh, listen. My husband is 6'5", graduated, retired from the Navy. He served 24 years on submarines. And so we're sitting at conversations, and I'll start saying things. He's just like, oh, God, here we go.
My father was in the Navy and used to say the gravy's in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Yale instead of Annapolis or someplace like that.
Yeah, the Naval Academy, right.
So, you get my face having the same expression I had before? Okay. I'm schwitzing. You know what schwitzing means?
No,
okay.
I don't, but you're going to tell me.
It's sweating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the lady comes in, let's say, and says, we have the man. The man comes in and says, I just can't get an erection. Or the lady comes in and says, if it's the other way around, I have to fake orgasms for my husband or boyfriend, whatever. How do you handle that case? Differently or the same, or what, versus the one who has to have sex 20 times a day?
Yeah, so for that one, if they're coming in and they're saying that's the only issue, we explore other things. We want to, it's always a rule out, right? So you have to rule out, you do like this, I'm not a medical doctor, but you ask a lot of medical questions, you know, and then you ask if there is any sort of sexual trauma that they've experienced. You know, what is happening for them during sex? Are they checking out? Are they disassociating? That sort of thing. But again, that's my PhD program as a sex therapist, learning about that. But typically when people are Googling me and they're seeing betrayal trauma and they're seeing, you know, sex and porn addiction, they're not coming in because they're having arousal problems. They're coming in because they've had trauma around this, right?
By trauma around, I mean, for example, one spouse just, we'll take the lady, she just can't stand to be with the guy, and she's there only because of the money, and she's afraid to leave and all that kind of stuff. And so she has sex with him, but she's vomiting emotionally. Is that you're talking about that kind of thing?
Kind of. I mean, really what happens is, like, that woman would probably be coming into my office and saying, I don't understand what's going on. He never wants to have sex with me. And then when we start to really explore and we start, and she's like, when I start asking a lot of questions, she's like, yeah, he sits on porn for 2 hours and then he comes upstairs and doesn't want to have sex with me, and I don't understand why not.
Or how about the one who comes in and says, the guy comes in and says, you've seen the wife, let's say, and the guy comes in and said, well, I'm not attracted to her anymore. If she hadn't gained 80 pounds, you know, that kind of stuff. And I told you a story where I had a couple of years ago where I had someone come in, back-to-back clients, in which both men came in, different times, different clients, and the issue was they both talked about how their spouses had gone from, let's say, 150 pounds to 300 pounds. And one person said, how could I sleep with her? And next case, the guy says, I love her. I don't care if she weighed 600 pounds, I'd still love her. So I think what we're getting to is a lot of this is in your, quote, head.
It is never about the partner that's been betrayed. Never. I have never seen a case where it's the betrayed partner's fault that their partner acted out in any sort of way or will not be intimate with them. Never.
So what do you do? So how do you can't, I once had someone say to me, you know, you can't fix every problem. I called you to complain. In Yiddish it's called fetch. Call to complain, but don't try to solve my problem, just listen.
Yep. Some people just want their story told and heard. And so that's another interesting question I ask when people come in, you know, within the first 3 sessions for sure. I'll say, where does your story begin with me? You know, like, where does it begin? And when you have a couple sitting there, neither one of them have the same starting point of the story. Because typically what's happened, we call it D-Day, so it's a discovery. So typically what's happened is one of the spouses, and statistically it's usually the female coming in saying, you know, I've discovered our credit card statement and there was, you know, $5,000 on OnlyFans. And then when I started to do—
What is OnlyFans?
Oh boy, it's like a, oh gosh, I don't want anybody going, don't go on there, don't Google it. So maybe I should say what it is so no one Googles it, but it's a porn.
I'm not going to do it.
Right, no, I'm telling you and listening, don't Google it. Or don't, like, because then it's going to mess up your whole algorithm. But it's a porn site where there's live actors and you're paying. And so a lot of people will pay a lot of money in order to participate in that because they feel like it's a connection. They feel like they're being seen and heard, but that's a whole other show.
Shockingly enough, we only have 2 minutes left in the
Oh
show.
my goodness!
I mean, I feel like I just met you. You know,
all right. So what do you want to know?
And I didn't even go on LinkedIn or whatever it was whatever they find to find you.
What do you want to know?
Well, on the air, what I want to know is the following.
Okay.
First of all, please tell us if someone wants to find out more about you. What's your website? And go very.
I will. And it's kind of right here. So it's Grit and Grace Recovery is the name of this practice. So my website is gritandgracerecovery.com.
One more time, please.
Gritandgracerecovery.com.
And so they can find out more about you and learn what you do?
I have a blog. I have lots of free resources on there, how to get in contact with me. We're currently offering a couple different groups. We offer a group for partners of those who have been convicted of child pornography, and we offer groups for betrayed partners, and those are starting up pretty soon.
Okay, so that's the way they can find you.
Yes.
Are you coming back to my show?
Yeah, sure.
Promise on its engine?
Yeah,
And I promise to only blush 6 times.
Okay.
How many times did I blush in this show
I
so
think
far?
I counted 14, but we'll go to
For
6.
the-
That's pretty good.
Well, I'm only 14 years of age.
Okay.
So I have so many more things we haven't gotten
Okay.
into.
Okay.
And I'm a justice of peace tomorrow in a wedding. I'm not going to
So
raise any.
exciting.
I'm not going to raise any of these topics from today's.
That should not be part of your
Mention
champagne
about-
toast.
Champagne toast. That's right. Well, I don't drink.
Yeah.
Well, you probably knew that.
No,
You
I don't
prob-
either. I
Don't
don't.
you?
No, I really don't.
Diet Dr.
I'm
Pepper.
not in I'm not in recovery. I just don't drink. I just don't enjoy it that much. I guess college kind of got it out of my system.
Oh, I want to get those stories too.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm sure in your practice, just like in my practice, people say, well, what would you do in this case? I'm sure some people say, well, what advice do you have for me? And you
Yeah.
know, that kind of thing. And we'll get into that next time as to how
Okay.
you handle those things. Well, Tara, this has been a
Yeah, a lot of fun.
breathtaking, is that a good word to use?
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting, I've always said that
A jolt to the system.
a jolt to something, a jolt to something. So we'll see you again. And your name again, full please name?
Tara Beall-Gomes.
And by the way, tell your husband you're a great lady.
Oh, thanks. I'll make him watch this so he sees it.
Yes, this has been Bobo Ponsner on the Bobby O Show, and I hope you learned as much today as I did, and I did learn a lot today. Thank you very much, and thank you, Terry. You're so lovely.
Thanks for having me.